And welcome to Hannity. And tonight, an important message and reminder for my friends in the state-run legacy media mob. Donald Trump won. It wasn't close. It was a landslide. He won every single battleground state, the popular vote, and Republicans, they swept the Senate, they swept the House, and he now has, whether you like it or not, a mandate to fix what is broken, and it is his duty to nominate the cabinet of his choice. You may not like it. Too bad. So when you see all these people on television and the left, Democrats and legacy media, the feigned selective moral outrage, breathless hysteria over anything Donald Trump says or does, anything that they say about his nominations, it is important that you remember how the so-called adults in the Democratic Party performed over the last 4 years. Now, their colossal failures are far, they are wide, but tonight we're going to focus on one important issue. That is the crisis at our southern border that they lied to you about over and over and over again. The border is secure, the border is closed. It never was. And tonight I want to talk about one victim. Her name, Laken Riley. She is one of dozens of Americans allegedly murdered by Harris Biden unvetted illegal immigrants. Dozens of other Americans have been raped, including children. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other Americans, victims of violent crimes by Harris Biden unvetted illegal immigrants. Laken Riley. She was a 22-year-old nursing student in Augusta, Georgia. She was out running. She was an avid runner, an active member of her sorority, and was described by everybody that knew her as a loving, caring person, someone that could light up a room with her smile. But on February 22nd, while out on a jog at the University of Georgia, Laken Riley was brutally beaten. She was sexually assaulted. She was murdered. Her lifeless body was left in the woods near a running trail. A 26-year-old illegal immigrant from Venezuela who crossed Joe Biden, Kamala Harris's wide-open border. Of course, there was aiding and abetting going on unlawfully in 2022, is now on trial for Laken's murder. And today, prosecutors described this unbelievable, evil, heinous attack during their opening arguments. Now, we've got to give you a viewer warning. What you're about to hear is extremely graphic. Take a listen.
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus. And in his hunt, he encountered 22-year-old Laken Riley on her morning jog. And when Laken Riley refused to be his rape victim, he bashed her skull in with a rock repeatedly. She was hidden kind of almost under a tree and covered up with a bunch of leaves. The first thing he noticed was that her breasts were completely exposed. All 3 layers of her top clothing were pulled up above and around her neck. He also noticed that her running tights, which she typically wears above her navel, were pulled down and her underwear was protruding from her tights. He also noticed severe injuries to the left side of her head.
Imagine for a second this was your family member, your neighbor, a loved one in your life. Laken Riley fought for her life, battling her attacker for nearly 20 minutes. She even managed to dial 911 during the assault. Take a listen.
Clark County 911.
Laken Riley, she was forced to fight for her life on a running trail in Athens, Georgia. Why? Because Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Alejandro Mayorkas, they didn't lift a finger to secure the border for more than 3+ years, almost 4 straight years. Frankly, they have blood on their hands, and they have the blood of many others on their hands. Now, neither Harris, nor Biden, nor Mayorkas, not once did they ever pick up the phone to call her family. Somebody that did, Donald Trump did. And you know what? They lied over and over again and said the border is secure. No, it was never secure. Laken and so many other young women and men would be alive today if this incompetent, morally bankrupt administration simply did their jobs. Instead, they were aiding and abetting in all this lawlessness. But don't take my word for it. Listen to Bill Clinton on the campaign trail. You might recall.
You had a case in Georgia not very long ago, didn't you? They made an ad about a young woman who'd been killed by an immigrant. Yeah, well, if they'd all been properly vetted, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, if they properly were vetted, probably wouldn't have happened if they had documentation. There are more than 12.5 million illegal immigrants pouring into this country under Biden and Harris. And according to government data, look at this, 13,000 illegal Harris-Biden immigrants convicted of murder are inside our country right now, along with an additional 2,000 with pending murder charges. And meanwhile, more than 15,000 convicted rapists, sex offenders also inside this country, along with 2,500 kidnappers. All told, more than 400,000 criminal illegal immigrants are spread out across the country, along with another 222,000 with pending criminal charges. And that's not all. We have at least 100 illegal immigrants that we know of with suspected terror ties currently living inside the U.S. In other words, known terrorists in our country. Now, we know they're here. We don't know where they are. What are they likely doing? Plotting, planning, scheming another 9/11 or worse on our fellow Americans, on our country? But just yesterday, Biden's DHS secretary, he's out there bragging about his great performance at the border, boasting about the administration's tremendous success. What success? Take a look.
Do you think that there should have been anything done differently over the past 4 years at the border?
That the model that we have in place now have driven the number of encounters at the southern border down below 2019 levels, the last year before the pandemic struck our country and the world. We're facing an unprecedented level of displacement of people around the world. We have actually built an architecture now that is proving tremendously successful.
Right. It was more recent than I think some of the damage had already been done, Mr. Secretary, just with all due respect.
He's just a liar. Does the secretary want to say that say this to the family of Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nungary or Rachel Morin or any of the other Americans or their families who were allegedly murdered, raped, assaulted by their unvetted illegal immigrants who were welcomed into the country by Mayorkas? And then he lied, oh, the border's closed, the border's secure. I'm so sick of it. What does the border czar have to say, for her hard work finding the root cause of illegal immigration? And how many people need to die? How many people have to be raped? How many people have to be victims of crimes before they can figure out what's going on? Thank God they're not going to be there much longer. And it's no surprise that the border crisis was a top concern for voters in last week's election. And based on the results, only an idiot would double down on stupid like this and this open border agenda. And right now, on cue, far-left governor, Illinois, vowing to do everything he can do to protect illegal immigrants. This is Pritzker in Illinois. And the American citizens in his state will just have to take a back seat. Take a look.
We have a law on the books in the state of Illinois called the Trust Act, which prohibits our local law enforcement and sheriffs and the like from coordinating with the federal authorities. But we cannot prohibit them, federal law enforcement, from coming into our state to conduct raids or do anything else like that. So, look, I'm going to do everything that I can to protect our undocumented immigrants. They're residents of our state.
Now, the governor is not the only Democrat pledging to put illegals first. The far-left governor of Massachusetts, the mayor of Chicago, are among the other top Democrats promising to protect and provide for illegal immigrants no matter the cost. But a reckoning, thankfully, is coming. Both Donald Trump, Tom Homan, a real border czar. They are planning to send ICE into every sanctuary city and state in this country and find these people. And unlike Kamala Harris, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, and the incoming DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, they are serious people. They are dedicated to fixing this problem and enforcing the law. And the new Trump administration is already scouting out locations for big detention centers used to hold illegal immigrants before they are deported. And on January 20th, 2025, not far away, catch and release will be over. Asylum abuse will be penalized. Latin American countries supporting or enabling this mass illegal immigration, they will face serious consequences. Cartels, they will no longer be able to operate with impunity. Millions of illegals will rightfully be deported one way or the other. Again, Donald Trump won. He won pledging to do this. This is what the American people want. I know the left, legacy media that nobody cares about, Democrats, they will scream bloody murder. And despite all the noise and all the predictable hysteria from the radical left, Donald Trump will fix what is broken. Thankfully, lives will be saved. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.